Hey there folks, this is Lucifer Leghorn coming back at you with another video, a long overdue video. So I'm going to be discussing today about a little conversation that the STS Council had the other day, and it was a little bit of a misunderstanding. Yes, I actually have one of the windows open to give me a little bit of more lighting, natural light, whatnot, so you see flashes going on, that's cars passing by. Anyway, so we were having a discussion in our council group, and the topic sort of went south really quickly, a little bit more so than anybody intended, and a question was asked. Excuse me, I have got the burps. A question was asked by one of our council members that, is STS a Christian satanic organization? The answer to that is no. Hardcore no. We are LeVeyan through and through. But it brings up a topic that needs to be addressed for most of Satanism in general. Okay. And what that basically is how is Satanism different from Christianity, and how is it not different? And at what point do you separate the Christian rhetoric away from Satanism? To answer that, we have to go to the oldest form of known Satanism. This goes back beyond Anton LaVey, beyond Aleister Crowley. This goes all the way back to as early as possible. And some say it's the Gnostic texts and whatnot. And what that is a form of Luciferianism, or Gnostic Luciferianism as it's called nowadays, where it really is just reversed Christianity. And when I say that, I mean that they take Lucifer, okay, and they take God and they flip the roles, okay, where Lucifer is suddenly the good guy and God, the demiurge, is the bad guy. This is the oldest form of satanic practice there is. It is the simplest concept. It is not modern Satanism, though. And what we need to remember is that in our practices, we don't do that. We don't flip the roles. I mean, we acknowledge that God is actually the villain, and Lucifer is not. But that's not based on any Gnostic texts or anything like that. It is based on simple observance of the Christian Bible and what God does in it versus what Lucifer does in, what Satan does in everything else. And how the two interact with each other. It's just simple observation. We realize that God is a petty little child who runs around killing and slaughtering and whatnot just because he doesn't get his way. He curses animals, he throws out his creations and everything. Whereas Satan teaches and instructs and learns. Now, we would not be able to make these comparisons without the older systems of Satanism that are no longer really around anymore. They've been revived, but their original contexts are no longer around. Like I said, they've been revived from lost literatures, found literatures, and texts, but a continuous line of practice has not ever happened up until Anton LaVey opened up the doors. Some would argue that it would go back a little bit further, and I could agree with that going back to Aleister Crowley at the earliest point. But beyond that, no, you're just getting disjointed stuff there. Satanism has been around for a very, very, very long time. And it was the terms Satanist and Luciferian are the two original terms to our religion, okay? And what it basically came from was the Inquisitions and the Christian Inquisitions, the Catholic Inquisitions, the Spanish Inquisition. This is the burning times where people were being burned at the stake for being witches. They were being taken away and tortured into false confessions and all sorts of things. This was that time frame. And what we get from that is the Catholic Church creating this mystique about witches, ancient, old hanger-ons to the old pagan practices. The Catholic Church went in, they went on to the pagan sacred grounds and everything, and they established their churches there. They built their churches on sacred ground. They demonized pagan gods and whatnot, and they literally, the Christians, the Catholic Church especially, created the entire mythos of the Satanic religion that we use today. There is at no point in time in our modern tradition of Satanism that we cannot trace it back to the Catholic Church and the falsifications that they established to demonize and create for themselves an enemy. What they were trying to do is put butts in pews and keep people under control. Now, what you got to understand here is that the oldest form of political system is religion. This goes all the way back to the caveman times. Now, in religion, with most traditional religions, you have a good guy and a bad guy, and people did not want to encounter the bad guy, so they always had to follow the good guy and do what the good guy said, so nothing bad from the bad guy would happen to them. If they didn't follow the good guy's instruction, the bad guy was going to come in and do something bad to them. And this is the mindset right there that the Christians played on. Satan was the bad guy. He was evil. His demons would possess you. They would make you do horrible things. They would take your daughter away and turn her into a witch where she would go out and hurt people, be a harlot. She would give away her virginity or innocence. All this other stuff. They would kill crops, kill livestock. Just generally be the overall bad guy. And the Catholics played on this. And so they created the entire mythos of Satan, hell, and the devil. Now, here's the thing. We can trace back these stories, these literatures and whatnot, beyond the Catholics to their true point in origin. However, with the Christians being around for over 2,000 years, at our stage in the game, we can no longer fully, as Satanists, separate ourselves from the Christian mythos. We are a derivative, a reactionary derivative of the Christian religion. Literally, we fall into the Abrahamic family of religions. And when I say that, I mean literally, it starts with Zoroastrianism, and then it goes to a few other religions that eventually, I say this, they eventually turned into Judaism. And from Judaism, which was the original true Abrahamic religion, okay, from that, after the death of Christ, about 300 years later, almost immediately after the death of Christ, a little cult of followers of the New Testament of Christ's teachings formulated. They lived in the sewers of Rome and other big cities. These were called Christians, but they were little cult groups. Okay, they were like little covens, and they all lived underground in Rome or other big cities. Emperor Nero was known for persecuting these people. Eventually, Emperor Constantine had the Council of Nicaea formed, which canonized the scripture of the Holy Bible, and the Christians went from being tiny little cults and Gnostic groups of Jewish people out in the deserts and whatnot, and they came together underneath a new banner that was no longer Judaism or Israel. They became Christians, and from that they became the Catholic Church. So that is where the Christians formulated. About 400 years later, in the 1300s, Islam was born with the teachings of Muhammad and whatnot, and they were, for the longest time, the newest member of the Abrahamic traditions family. But around that same time, the Dark Ages were also brewing in. This was the 1300s, the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, and people were not going into church as much. You had pagans who had been persecuted. They were no longer as big, but they were still around, and the last little remnants of them were still around. And so the Catholic Church decided, okay, we're going to go full bore and persecute these people and turn them into our bad guys. And that's when the burning time started. So it was in the 1300s that the first terms of Satanism and Luciferianism and witchcraft and whatnot all became a big deal and a big word that was on everybody's lips. And so the Catholic Church and the Christians at this point in time had already been around for about 1,000 years. They had been around since about 300 AD, and they created this mythos of demons, devils, and whatnot, and now it was blowing up. Now they had witches. These were the human on earth instigators, the representatives of hell's forces and of the devil that were after your soul. And that's how Satanism got its first name. Now, it wouldn't be up until later that our core ritual, the Black Mass, which had been spoken about for a couple hundred years, no one had any description of what it was like. Not even the Malleus Maleficarum had a full description of what the Sabbath ritual looked like. Some people said that they danced naked around a bonfire, they conjured up the devil, they sacrificed babies, they sacrificed animals, yada 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 yada. But it wasn't until Lavoisier was on trial. Now, Lavoisier was a French abortionist and occultist, and supposedly she had performed black masses and conjured up the devil, and she had done these for various rich people, and she was eventually caught and charged with abortionist crimes in, I believe, 1600s France. And during her trial, she described the rites of the Black Mass for the first time ever. And from her descriptions of the Black Mass, from her accountings, is where all other subsequent satanic rituals have been formulated from. So all of our rituals in Satanism, actual Satanism, come directly from a Christian trial and the inversion of the Catholic Mass, because that is exactly what the Black Mass is. It is an inversion of the Catholic Mass. Satanism is indelibly and intricately linked to Christianity. We are the youngest of that family. However, we're not uniquely stationed only in the Abrahamic religions. We are the crossover. Satanists are a bridge between the pagan traditions, the ancient pagan traditions that have nothing to do with Christianity, that have nothing to do with the Black Mass or any of that stuff. These go back to ancient Celtic, Nordic, even African cultures, South American cultures, any occult system that is older than Christianity, that is nature-based, that is completely pagan, and has nothing to do with the Abrahamic traditions. They're the pagans, they're the heathens, the witches and whatnot, the true witches, the druids. They fall into their own category. And the Christians, the Abrahamic traditions, fall into a separate category. They started with Atonism and Zoroastrianism, and eventually came down to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Satanism spurns from those, takes from the pagan traditions, and falls squarely in the middle. True Satanism does, because we have pagan traditions, we acknowledge the pagan calendars, the pagan holidays, but we utilize the vilified versions of these deities in the pagan traditions. We utilize their vilified versions from the Abrahamic traditions, and we create that center balance point. And that's what Satanism is. So Satanism is neither fully Christian or Abrahamic, and nor is it fully pagan. We can trace our lineage back to both sides. Now, here is where most Satanists make the mistake. Alright? Most Satanists will choose one side or another, that they will still use the satanic terms, but they will only acknowledge the pagan side. This is a complete mistake. You cannot do that and fully call yourself a Satanist. You need to, as a Satanist, you need to understand both traditions. Okay? That way, when you take the Abrahamic traditions and understand the history, understand the lore, understand the hypocrisies, and then you take the ancient pagan traditions that you follow, you pick your pantheon through it, you can then intermesh them and interweave them. Because a lot of what the Christians took, a lot of what the Abrahamic traditions take, do come from the older pagan traditions. They've demonized them. So you take stuff like Cernunnos, Loki, Freya, Thor, Cerberus, Hades, the Minotaur, and all these other different things, and you look into the Christian pantheons, and you'll find representations of them. But then what are they? What is the Medusa Gate of Dis? What was Medusa? Alright, what are these centaurs that supposedly guard the one circle of hell? Where are the Minotaurs at? What is a Minotaur? Most Christians wouldn't know these, but the pagans do. When we look at this side, we see where Christianity stole from paganism, and we understand the history there. And Satanists, a lot of pagans nowadays, they won't even touch or research or do anything about Christianity or look into it. And a lot of the Christians, they will not research or do anything about the pagan lores or whatnot. They wouldn't understand about Bridget, Diana, or Celtic myth. They wouldn't know what Tir na Nog is. They wouldn't know any of that. And most of these people who stick completely to the pagan and Druidic lore only know the most rudimentary, fundamental basics of what Christianity is about. But the Satanist, the true satanic priest, he's different. He is different. He's not going to shy away from one side or another. He's going to absorb from both sides, and he's going to become stronger than either side, because he's going to have all that literature from both elements backing him up. You would look in his library and you'd see everything from the Holy Bible to the Quran to the Hebrew books. You'd see right next to him the Satanic Bible, the Satanic Scriptures, Satanic Testament. You'd see Infernal Geometry. You'd see books by Aleister Crowley and whatnot. And you just see all this lore from both sides. You'd see Gnostic texts. You'd see a full study of the Christian mythology and history, as well as the pagan and occult mythology and history. And the true satanic priest that wants to excel at what he does and understand it will understand both sources simultaneously. A good example of where some pagans and Wiccans go wrong in recent years is when Gerald Gardner first created Wicca. He created it as a balance between male and female. But a lot of modern Wiccan groups do not acknowledge the male element and only go towards the female elements, such as the Dianic traditions and whatnot. And this is a mistake, because true Wicca is meant to be a balance between male and female. Satanism is the same way. We are a balance between the Abrahamic and the pagan. And we fall right in that middle point, right there. So to the question, is the Satanic Thulian Society a Christian Satanist movement? No, we're not. We are true Satanists. We fall right in that middle, where we're not afraid. We have guys who are looking into the Norse traditions, who looking into the infernal geometry traditions, who are looking into the Germanics, the Celtic, as well as other people who are looking into the Abrahamic traditions, such as Babylon and Cain and so on and so forth, looking into those histories and lores. And then we have people who are combining them, who are sorting out where does one history end and the other one begin. One of the greatest examples of that is with the history of Cain in our tradition. After he built the city of Enoch and gave it to his son, he left and no one knows where he went to. He just kind of disappears from the Bible. In our tradition, he went northward, and with the black flame of Satan, he established the Norse traditions, the Hyperborean eras and areas such as Thule and Hyperborea. And that's where being able to merge the traditions, bring it full circle, come into play. And that's what true Satanism is about. Sometimes we make up a fiction to create the truth. Sometimes we take the truth that's been buried underneath fictions and we unearth it and we tell it. But the point of the matter is we don't shy away from the Christian traditions, nor do we shy away from the pagan traditions. We take both sides and we learn about them. And that is what Satanism is about. Now, I'm going to say, some Satanists don't like that. They don't even want to acknowledge the Christian side because they think that if they don't acknowledge it, it'll go away. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not the case. This is a religious system that takes up over 1/3 of the Earth's population. It's not just disappearing. It is something that has been around for 2,000 years now. We have no choice but to acknowledge it. Actually, it's older than 2,000 years old. We're talking about traditions that go back 3, 4, 5,000 years, sometimes up to 6,000 years. And it's part of our planet's history. And it's something that we have no choice. We need to acknowledge it. We need to study it. And we need to do it on both the pagan side and the Christian side, or the Abrahamic side. So that's what I got for you guys today. Shout out to the Stygian Council for STS for bringing this topic up. And I hope this video explains to them where I'm coming from, where the STS is and what they're about. Again, we don't shy away from either tradition. We look to blend our traditions. We have people looking into the Norse mythology, into the Germanic mythology, the infernal geometry, and we also have people looking into Cainism and Babylon the Great, into other myths and lore such as vampirism and werewolves and whatnot. We look at all that, and that's what Satanism is about. We are the melting pot of myth and lore, and we bring it forward as Satanists in a cohesive way. So thank you all for joining me. I see it's been about 25 minutes now that I've been rambling and talking and whatnot, and if you made it this far, thank you very much for sticking with me. Tell me what you think in the comments down below. You know the routine. Like, share, subscribe. Go check out the Satanic Thulian Society. I will be throwing links to our websites and whatnot down there in the description below. And until next time, my name's Lucifer Lake of Orden. Hail Satan, and I'm out of here.